wanted to do today is we are going to talk a little bit about sleep. I think that most people know the health benefits of getting enough sleep, but I want you to also make the connection to not only just the health benefits, but how this affects the physical transformations that a lot of you are looking to make, where you just are like, listen, I'm doing all the things. I'm watching my protein intake. I'm watching my fiber. I'm lifting weights 2 to 3 times a week. I'm getting my steps in. I'm trying to drink water. I'm trying to do all these things. And what's happening? I want you to see the correlation between that and how sleep affects all of that. So that's what we're going to go in today. Let me pull it up really quick. Hey, Jess. Um,
Hey, how's it going?
it's going good. I got my windows open, so I'm a happy girl. All right. So we're gonna talk about the 3 a.m. wake up call. I think most of us have experienced this at some point or another, that 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. where you wake up, you're wide awake, you can't go back to sleep. We're going to talk about how that hormones are really trying to send a message to you, where training, the personal training part of it, the strength training part of it is the stimulus, but there is something else that can determine whether or not the whole thing works. So we're going to talk about that today. Um, Hold on. I want to make sure. There we go. Got my chat up in case you guys have questions. Okay, so it sounds familiar. You're working out, trying to know your nutrition. I just talked about this, but you don't see any physical changes. You are waking up. Usually it's between 1 and 3 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling. And then you're exhausted by 2 p.m. You think, oh, this is good though, because if I just push through, I'll be able to get a good night's sleep. But then come 10 p.m., you're wide awake again. Ever experienced that? I have. You feel puffy, moody, like your body is working against you. The scale isn't moving, even though you feel like you're doing everything right. I think we can all relate. This is not a willpower problem. This is not an issue where we need to be doing more. It's a hormonal issue, and doing more is not going to help you. Will actually usually make things worse. So what we're going to go over today is how and why sleep is actually a body composition tool. It's not just a wellness habit. What's actually happening to your sleep in midlife? It is hormonal. We'll talk about that. I do want to talk just very briefly about HRT, because I'm finding that the good news is that we do have more practitioners that are prescribing HRT. The bad news is that a lot of them are saying that they are menopause experts and they don't know how to dose correctly, and what all that means. So I'm going to go into that because it's something that I've experienced. I'm going through another little blip with it now, and I'm seeing it more and more with the women that I work with, where they're like, I thought this patch was going to help me, and I feel worse. So we're going to talk about that. How broken sleep is working against spring shred, any kind of fat loss results you're looking for, why your circadian rhythm might be more, I don't want to say broken, than you think, but we will talk about that and what to actually do about it. There's 2 tiers, and we're going to talk about where to start. That is exactly my routine. Yep. Unfortunately, I get it. I am there sometimes. So the spring shred connection or your fat loss connection. So a lot of you have noticed this. The workouts this round are definitely a little bit different. And it's not that there's no cardio component to them, because there is, but it's not like I have you doing these big circuits where you're running around. We have not hit a treadmill. We have not hit anything like that. What we have done is that they are very strategically designed to create a more output from your metabolic system. It's more of a demand on your metabolism. So we use compound movements. Now, compound movements are also, chest press, any kind of heavy lat pull, your squats, your deadlifts, those are all compound movements. But when I have you in a squat and you're also rowing, that's a compound movement too. And you're not going to be able to lift as heavy, but it is a compound movement. And what that means is that we're creating a demand from multiple areas of your body. That requires a lot of output. We use power, right? So there's sometimes where I'm like, push out of that quickly, come out of it quickly. Or where you're like, the ones that everybody likes, where your feet are going back and forth, right? Everybody just loves those. But that is actually what we want to do, is activate those type 2 muscle fibers. That's power. Unilateral work means that we're working one arm or one leg at a time. And all of these create that extra demand on your body. So it's not like we're just running around doing a ton of cardio. So the workouts stimulate the fat loss, but sleep is where your body is going to be able to recover and how your body actually responds to it. Without adequate sleep, there's not enough recovery, and your results are going to be reflective in that. So what's actually happening to your sleep? Speak of the devil, I don't know if you guys just heard that. What's actually happening to your sleep in midlife? It is the hormonal shift. So we know that as we go into perimenopause, our hormones start to go through this kind of chaotic time where estrogen starts to fall off, progesterone starts to fall off, but estrogen, they don't fall off evenly. Estrogen kind of pings around a little bit, and causes some problems. So as estrogen declines, you get less deep sleep. So you will get a little bit more night waking. I don't know if you guys have ever paid attention to like if you wear a Fitbit or some kind of tracker where you're like, what are all these little like points where it says I'm awake and it doesn't feel necessarily like I am awake? It's just a little bit more disrupted sleep in that. Progesterone, when it drops off, it's a natural calming effect. So that disappears. And so now your body is less calm, right? The cortisol rhythm is disrupted. So just know that cortisol and insulin do a little dance, right? So if one is high, one is low, and they kind of do this, but if one is affected, the other is. So cortisol can be disrupted from insulin. Insulin can be disrupted from cortisol. And what happens is that as estrogen and progesterone start to drop off, you become more stress sensitive and less insulin sensitive. So those get kind of wacky, right? And then with the estrogen declining, you are more sensitive to temperature, which is where those hot flashes come. It's basically your body's sensor towards heat gets really reactive to where all of a sudden like you just get just a little bit warm and the next thing you know you're in a flash, right? So something in your brain is just like it just lights up really quickly. So those are going to be the hormonal shifts. The 3 a.m. pattern is actually a blood sugar dip overnight. That's how it starts, is that your blood sugar drops off. And so cortisol will come in to push that back up. Well, when that happens and cortisol rises, you're wide awake. They call it a cortisol awakening response. If you didn't set off your alarm every morning and you just let your body wake up naturally, it is cortisol that, excuse me, that wakes you up. So it's supposed to do that. It rises, it wakes you up, and then throughout the day, it just slowly is supposed to taper off. Unfortunately, for most of us, that's not quite the rhythm that it's in. So the thing to know is that this is not anxiety. Even though a lot of times your mind might be racing, it's a blood sugar and cortisol rhythm issue. And it is fixable if you know the right approach. We're going to talk about those 2 tiers so you know where to start and then how to layer things in. Now, this is the part that I wanted to talk about in terms of, here we go. In terms of HRT, whether you decide to do HRT or not is entirely up to you. I just hope that you will at least educate yourself so you know what your options are. But there are a lot of things that women don't know about HRT. Sometimes I'm like, where do I even start? A lot of times practitioners, especially now, as they're getting better about being able to prescribe HRT, and you do have different options, is you have to remember that they're going to be bringing their biases into this meeting with you. They have biases. We all have biases. And so there's going to be things that they like and things that they don't, and they're going to prescribe based on those biases and their fears. And so some people will find that their doctors are okay prescribing estrogen for whatever reason. Some will tell you, oh, so if you don't have a uterus, a lot of times practitioners will say you don't need progesterone. Not true. But that's their bias, right? Some will go, oh, I'm a little bit more afraid of estrogen, so I'll prescribe progesterone. And so they kind of come with their own bias in terms of how they will prescribe this. But here's what you need to know about this, is that think of when you metabolize these hormones, I want you to think that as they metabolize, they have these cells or parking lots, what we're going to call them, that they're supposed to go to. And that's where they get utilized to do the things that they're supposed to be doing. As we go through perimenopause and those hormones drop off, what happens is those parking spots empty out because there's no hormone in them. And what happens is that as those cells are empty and they're supposed to be holding those hormones, other hormones will come in there and kind of hang out. So when you then put these, slap a patch on, or you're an oral or whatever, you go to put these hormones in your system. Your body doesn't have a place for them. It doesn't know how to metabolize them, and you also have to have good gut health and good liver health, because both of those places are where you're going to metabolize these hormones. So what can happen is, let's say that your prescriber gives you estrogen. She puts a patch on, but you have, you've been going through perimenopause for a while. She puts a patch on, and all of a sudden all of your symptoms are getting worse. You're like, maybe you felt better for a little bit, and then all of a sudden they get worse. What can happen is, if that estrogen doesn't have any place to go, she doesn't know how to be metabolized correctly. If the gut doesn't know how to metabolize and the liver can't metabolize well, then that estrogen, instead of getting excreted out where it should get, it gets recycled back into your system. And that's when she causes problems. We don't want estrogen recirculating throughout your system. And it happens more than you realize. And so a lot of times people will come back to me with labs where they're like, my numbers are still fairly low, and my practitioner wants to increase my levels. And I'm like, yeah, but you have every sign of estrogen dominance, which means that your estrogen to progesterone ratio is off. There is no set magic number. If your provider is trying to get you to a certain number, that should be a big red flag, because you're looking for a certain ratio of progesterone to estrogen, and there's not a perfect spot, but kind of a well-known area is somewhere around 17 to 1. 17 estrogen to 1 progesterone is typically a pretty good ratio, just if you're looking at numbers. And so what we want is that ratio where they're balanced out and also you feel well. That's what we want. But if you're taking estrogen and you're not metabolizing it correctly, signs of estrogen dominance, which just means that that ratio is out of balance, are poor sleep or vivid dreams. And what happens is, if estrogen is too high in relation to progesterone, even though it should calm you and help you sleep at night, estrogen takes over. She's very bossy. She likes to take over. So she takes over, and so now you're not getting that calming effect. You will notice bloating and water retention. Just hold on to everything. When I noticed it this time and I knew I was off, was I suddenly had breast tenderness. I'm like, what? That's not. And then I started getting all the other signs. Irritability, mood swings, that's another one. So what do you do about this? Well, one, you want to make sure you have a doctor who understands this. And you're going to ask, like, can you tell me what my estrogen to progesterone levels are? Are they in ratio? There's no reason for them to be just testing one. They should be testing both. Am I metabolizing estrogen well? That's another one. Most doctors don't even know what a Dutch test is. It's actually a urine test. I won't go too much into it, but basically it's kind of like looking at that back door of like, okay, lab panel shows me these numbers, right? The Dutch test goes behind and shows you how well it's metabolizing. So you're getting to see behind the scenes of what's actually going on with that estrogen and progesterone and cortisol and other things. It's a Dutch test, I will say. I think that sometimes practitioners, especially functional health, naturopaths will do this quite a bit, will kind of pull the trigger on a Dutch test pretty quickly. And it's like a $450 test sometimes, depending upon where you get it. It's not something that you should need to run all the time, but it is something where if you're getting HRT and you're not, you feel like things they're just not working well, then a Dutch test is something that you might want to take a look at. Could your sleep issues be hormone balance versus deficiency instead of just that? The first thing that I'll always look at is, I'll look at, what did I eat the night before? What am I doing? Is there a way that it could be a blood sugar and cortisol issue? And then I look at, like, okay, could this be that estrogen has taken over? Because we need her to be in balance. Is my progesterone dose enough for sleep support? Usually they're going to prescribe anywhere from 100 to 200 milligrams for that. Again, it just depends on we want that calming effect. And that's why a lot of times if you are working with a practitioner who's like, you don't need progesterone, you don't have a uterus, the reason that they say that is that progesterone for a lot of practitioners is prescribed to help protect your uterus. But even if you don't have a uterus, progesterone is your calming hormone. So you're missing out on the calming benefit. And if you're having a sleep issue, then I would certainly question that. And then also, can you check your cortisol rhythm? What you want from a cortisol test is actually a saliva test. It's a 4-point saliva test. Just checking your cortisol in the morning is like it doesn't tell you what that rhythm looks like. We want to see what the rhythm looks like, not just what it looks like first thing in the morning. Well, I think I saw it. Question. Does obsessing about deadlifting count as vivid dreams? A little bit. Actually, I think that's kind of healthy. We're going to go with healthy on that one. You get a healthy one on that. That's funny. So your circadian rhythm is actually what's running the show. So most people think of sleep as something that happens at night, but what they don't realize is that it's actually a 24-hour rhythm that goes through. Your circadian rhythm is 24-hour biological clock. It regulates cortisol. Cortisol and melatonin work opposite, right? So if melatonin is high, cortisol is low. If cortisol is high, melatonin cannot be high. It's going to be low. Melatonin is what helps you calm down and sleep. It's going to help regulate your body temperature and your overall metabolic system. So when your circadian rhythm is off, everything downstream, including your sleep, including your hunger, including your cravings, including your fat burning abilities, all get thrown off. So there's 3 major things that can help set this circadian rhythm or set your clock. Light is the most powerful one. We're going to talk about that in a second. Food timing, we'll talk about that as well, because that's going to have to do with insulin and also stress response, and then also body temperature. Okay, so what poor sleep is costing in terms of a physical result. We know in terms of health what it can cost us, but when you're looking at like bottom line of like, I want to look like I work out and eat well and all of those good things. So we look at it from across the board in 3 different areas. First is hormonal. So if that cortisol isn't in that rhythm where it rises first thing in the morning to wake you up and then kind of comes down slowly, right? What happens is, especially if you're type A, those of you on this call, I'm also guilty, is you get that, what can happen is what we call a cortisol flip, where your cortisol stays low throughout the day. And this is like, no matter how much sleep I get, I'm still tired in the morning. That is a good, doesn't always mean that this is the case, but it's something to look at. Your cortisol could be too low first thing in the morning, but it should be higher. So if it starts low, right, and then it just kind of creeps up throughout the day just a little bit, and then at 10 p.m. at night, it goes up, and then you can't sleep. That is a reverse cortisol. It can also just stay elevated. And this, I think, happens for a lot of women just in general, is that it raises in the morning and then just it's a constant to-do list. I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. Here's my workout. And this is why we do breathing at the end of our workout. Cortisol will always rise along with other stress hormones during a workout. We need them, but we don't want them to stay elevated. So if you just like, okay, great, high five, all right, see you later, and then you rush out to go finish your mile-long list of to-dos, that cortisol is going to stay high. In that situation, your leptin drops. Leptin is your satiation hormone. When people ask me about GLPs, it deals with leptin. It basically keeps leptin high so that you're always feeling, what's one of the things it does is so that you're feeling more satiated. When you're in a higher chronically elevated cortisol state, your ghrelin actually spikes. Ghrelin is your hunger hormone. So now all of a sudden you're hungry all the time. You're craving things. You're wanting little snacky things. You typically want carbs because your body's trying to lower cortisol. Your brain knows that if it gets carbs actually lower cortisol because of the insulin in them. And your insulin sensitivity decreases. So the cells, right, should be sensitive to the message to pull insulin in and utilize it. But what happens is that sensitivity decreases, so it starts deaf earing that signal. And so insulin just stays in the bloodstream. We don't want that. From a muscle and recovery standpoint, growth hormone releases during sleep. So if you're not getting enough sleep, that growth hormone that actually helps us be able to grow muscle, just doesn't happen, right? So no deep sleep means no repair, no adding more muscle. Your strength gains start to stall, and you find that you're just more sore for longer and more often. From a fat loss perspective, you will notice that your body is now holding on to fat. Doesn't matter how many times a week you work out, it's now holding on to that fat. Belly fat in particular increases. You have energy crashes in the afternoon because your insulin is and cortisol are doing this roller coaster, which means that you're just going to naturally move less. It's harder to get yourself to get up and go when you are experiencing an energy crash. And so your metabolism actually slows down because all of this internal stress, it'll actually slow down to protect you. And that's how it kind of snowballs into the bigger issue. So the vicious cycle that a lot of women end up in is it starts with this poor sleep, right? So hormones start to drop off, they're starting to do some wacky things, and all of a sudden we're awake at 1 to 3 and we're just trying to get back to sleep. Well, that means that now my body is in a stress state. So my cortisol is going to stay elevated throughout the day, which means that now belly fat is going to increase. And because my cortisol is staying elevated, now I'm going to have more cravings because leptin and ghrelin have been disrupted. Leptin should be high, it's now low. Ghrelin is high. So now I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm storing belly fat, and I have cravings. And it's harder to stick to nutrition because you're craving sugar, you're craving caffeine. Your body is looking for ways to get a hit to feel better. And then it just starts all over and you cycle, right? You sleep poorly again because you were eating more carbs and you're not leaning towards protein because your body doesn't really want that because you're in a stress state, and it just keeps cycling through. So the good news is that one of the best things that you can do is actually strength train, right? So even in our spring shred, you'll notice that it is still strength first. Compound movement is an approach that's already working in your favor. You're already doing these workouts. Strength training is one of the most effective tools for regulating cortisol rhythm and improving sleep quality. You're literally training your way to better sleep. I just got off a phone call with one of the clients who was just like, I'm actually sleeping a lot better, right? And has already lost an inch off her waistline. We haven't even touched like macros or anything like that, simply from getting enough sleep. So step one is going, okay, I'm already participating on some level of strength training. Now I just need to make sure that I'm getting the right amount and I'm consistent enough. Now, everybody's going to be a little bit different in what they're looking for, but you're looking for 2 to 3 days a week of at least 2 to 3 days a week of strength training, at least 30 to 40 minutes. Ask yourself, are you getting that? That's where we start. And then you can toggle it based on how well you're recovering. If you're not getting that, the goal is going to be like, how do I get that? You know, in the in-person sessions, we've got lots of ladies who are like, hey, you know, can you come in on a different day? I highly recommend if you're having a hard time getting those workouts in, that you actually reach out to some of the other ladies and figure out how you can get in and get these workouts in so that you have that piece in place. So the first tier after that is going to be all lifestyle. Remember that light is the most powerful of the tools that you have. And even though sleep is at the end of the day, it starts in the morning. So first thing in the morning, as you wake up, ideally would be to get morning light within 30 minutes of waking. That's not always going to happen. But 10 minutes of natural light anchors your cortisol awakening response and sets that melatonin drop for later that night. So getting that morning light actually helps you sleep better later on because of the rhythm. Now, what if you can't get outside first thing in the morning? You get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or you live somewhere where, like here, where, you know, maybe in the winter the sun doesn't come up till, or at all, or till later, right? Get a light where you're sitting in front of one of those happy lights. We actually have one here where during fall and winter in the morning, even if I'm not just sitting down, you know, doing nothing, I've got it on while I'm getting ready. 10 minutes, you don't have to look directly at it. Ideally, don't. You just want it facing your face. And it's a way to tell your brain, like, hey, this is when I want that cortisol going up. That's the first step. The second is making sure that you are getting a balance of protein and a portion of carbs at dinner. And everybody's going to be a little bit different on how much that they can actually eat. But the reason that we want this combination is we don't want no carbs, right? Because if I have no carbs, I'm going to get a blood sugar crash. So we want a certain amount of carbs. We also don't want to overshoot it, because if I overshoot carbs, I'm going to start high and then it's going to crash, which means that 1 to 3. We want pretty even. And we want protein in there and fiber because it's going to help keep it more even keeled throughout the night. Ideally, somewhere around 30 grams of protein. Again, it could be sweet potato, it could be right, it could be any carb you want, right? You just got to kind of play with it and balance it out. And typically, when I have women, the first thing that I look at, like I said, is I'll look at like, what did you eat the night before? And usually it's going to either be that they ate too many carbs with not enough protein, or they didn't eat enough carbs with protein. So you got to balance. That's the first place that you're going to look at right after the morning light. Then the third one you're going to look at is temperature to trigger sleep, right? So we know that the body, when your body temperature is cooler, it is a signal to your brain that it's time to sleep. So if your room is too warm, I have a fan blowing on my body all the time, just because it keeps me, even if I wake up at night, if my body is cool enough, I typically can go back to sleep. If I feel too warm, game over. So I've got to keep it cool enough. But one thing that you can do is, either if you have access to a sauna or even just a hot shower before you go to bed, the hot shower then tells your brain, oh, I need to cool down. So as you crawl into bed, your body temperature is cooling down, and that drops signals to your brain that it's time to sleep. So those two, that combination is a really good one. I do like that one. And then one of the things that I learned several years ago is that I just don't mess with my phone as I'm crawling into bed. I read, I don't look at my phone. I don't like any stimulation at all, even though I live with someone who, and a lot of you women can totally relate, who could literally just be chasing the cat and yapping away and then just lay down and go to sleep. We do this almost nightly, where he feels a need to continue talking to me. I'm just reading my book and just like, and trying to get him to stop talking so that I don't get stimulated. Because even just quiet conversations, my brain will start to take off. The whole point for me is to cut my brain off and not let it like jump back off. So we want as much calming that we can get as you're going to sleep. Tier 2 is like, okay, I'm doing all those things. Now what? We talked about this before. Magnesium glycinate. It would be my first supplement out of the gate. You can go 300 to 400 milligrams before bed. It does calm the nervous system. It reduces cortisol. It supports deep sleep. It is literally the best move for most women. It's my absolute, I can't think, do I have a more favorite supplement? I don't think I do. Game changer for me. Magnesium threonate, we've talked about this before. A lot of people like it because it does cross the blood-brain barrier. But it does work different in that it is typically better for cognitive, and why some people like it is because it deals with the busy brain side of sleep disruption. Whereas if you wake up and you've got kind of that racing brain where it's like da 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 da, and it kind of goes off, threonate helps kind of like you bring into focus, and so it's really good for that. But it is these three that I'm about to talk about, they're ones you got to kind of try out, because what they can do is actually stimulate you. So while threonate can help the mind chatter, it helps you focus more. And so sometimes then all of a sudden you're like zeroed in and the brain is still running. It's just not running in a million different things. So threonate can be good. Some people do better with it during the day. Some people can take a little bit at night. I don't think it's in threonate in this one. I don't think so. I'll show you guys this one in just a second. L-theanine is in this. So L-theanine also is one of these that it's like, you got to kind of test it out. It does promote relaxation without sedation. It does pair well with magnesium. L-theanine is a known calming supplement. However, it also increases dopamine. And so for some people that like the reaction to the dopamine can be higher than the calming. And so L-theanine can wake you up. And so this happens a lot. I'll walk you through. This is Cortisol Manager. It's also one of my favorite supplements. And it does have L-theanine in it. The like I'll show you what it looks like. Can you see that? I've been on this one for several years, and I really do like it. And it has, I'll tell you what it has in it right now. It's got a blend of ashwagandha. It does have L-theanine in it. And then it also has this third one in. We like to call it PS because nobody else wants to really have to say that. I'm not going to say it. It's PS. It also, so that's also in this. Specifically lowers nighttime cortisol levels. So if you are one of these, like 1 to 3 a.m. is your pattern, this is one of them, and this does have it in there. The serving size on this is 2 of the tablets. I only take 1 for this reason, because these 3, it doesn't, I don't think it has threonine in it, but it does have L-theanine and PS in it. If I get too much of that, I'm awake. And I have a lot of my clients who can't even take 1 of these because they find they're like, I slept amazing until 3, and then I was wide awake. Like there was 0 chance I was going back to sleep. So some people can't take it at all. That's pretty rare. But I would say most of the women that I've worked with that have tried it before only take 1, and I only take 1. It just wakes me up. Yeah, absolutely. Totally understand. Heather just put something in the chat. So the ashwagandha also is an adaptogen that lowers cortisol over time. I get a lot of feedback on this one because people will say, I tried ashwagandha and it didn't work. And I'm like, you've taken it for 2 nights. These are supplements. They take time. They're not like crack cocaine and now all of a sudden you're like really high. It doesn't work like that. Ashwagandha is calming and it helps lower cortisol overall over time. It's definitely not a one-night fix. Your omega-3s and DHA, these are daily. They do improve sleep quality and reduce night waking, just simply because they're working from an inflammation pathway, and so that helps with sleep. And then progesterone, it's something that I highly recommend. If you're not taking and you are having sleep issues and you've done all of these other things, you're like, I just feel like I have all of those symptoms that you mentioned in terms of estrogen dominance, I would talk to your practitioner about it, because even if you don't have a uterus, you could benefit from taking progesterone just simply for the calming effects. Start with magnesium glycinate, give it a couple weeks, and then add as you go along. Putting it into practice this week, what I recommend is if you are having some sleep issues, first thing, get outside or get some kind of light within 30 minutes of waking. Even just 10 minutes of natural light or like a happy light, something like that just gets light in your eyes. That's always the first step. I would recommend tracking your sleep, but not obsessively. It's really easy. It's why I didn't wear one of these for a while, because I was really getting like super anal about like every little score. And it was ridiculous. So I stopped for a while, and now I'm like, okay, I can approach this from just a normal like tracking standpoint. But you're looking for different patterns, like what time do you wake? And then you go, okay, I woke up at this time. Is it that 1 to 3 window? What did I eat the night before? What did I eat the night before? Like, did I scroll? What did I eat? What did my day look like? Things like that. And then you want to pick one fix from tier 1 and commit that for, it says for the rest of the spring shred, but I would say commit for that for, for at least a week or 2, so that you're not feeling overwhelmed, but you're actually implementing the things that you're learning instead of trying to implement a ton of things. I do recommend 30 grams of protein at dinner with at least a serving of carbohydrates. This one thing alone can help overnight blood sugar and the 3 a.m. cortisol pattern. So hopefully that was helpful. I will open it up. Do you guys have any questions? Relatable at all? We're good? Super relatable. And the other thing to keep in mind too is you can go through periods where everything is great and then all of a sudden you hit a bump. I do it all the time where I'm like, I've got it down and everything is going great. And then all of a sudden, and this happened again, I don't know, a month and a half ago, when I noticed that things were definitely off. And it took me a little bit to kind of figure out what was going on. And it really is directly related to, it's related to the statins I'm, and this is basically what we're figuring out. The statins that I'm on are probably not doing any favors to my gut. Now my gut is off, and now because my gut is off, the HRT that I am on is not being metabolized, which is new, right? All of a sudden that's off. And so now a little extra weight around the midsection. I'm feeling puffy. Like I can always tell when my sports bra starts digging in right into my rib cage. And so all of those things are off, and I could tell based on those symptoms. I'm like, my progesterone isn't working, and that's how I figured that whole thing out. And so for me, the first thing was figuring out like, okay, what's going on with my gut? I got to figure that out first. And as I'm doing all of that, it's starting to calm back down. So question is, are there any of the supplements that we shouldn't take together? I would always, anytime you're going to go to take a supplement, I would plug it in to whether you're using AI or Google or anything and say, who shouldn't take this? Or are there any meds that you shouldn't take with this? And you typically will find things that are like, don't mix these two. It's why I like to layer one in at a time, because you never really know how something's going to affect you. Most of the supplements that I take are single supplement just for that very reason. I had somebody recommend the cortisol manager. Oh gosh, it's been a really long time ago, and I took it and I did well with it. And so that's how I ended up on that. It was from a practitioner who said, take this. It's pretty popular with most practitioners. So, but I would definitely Google that. Any other questions before we go? I'm taking prednisone, which mimics cortisol, suppresses the adrenal glands, so I'm hesitant to experiment in supplements. Any suggestions? I would say definitely talk to your practitioner. I would. This is where it gets tricky, because if you're working with someone from conventional medical profession, that doesn't mean that it's bad, but they will definitely steer clear of supplements. They don't always see the value, and typically they're going to be like, it's not going to do you any good anyway, and so they'll kind of poo-poo that. If you're working with someone on the more functional side, I like functional medicine doctors because they kind of bring both worlds together, and they can they're going to look at the body as a whole. That would be the practitioner I would go see in this situation. I would work with a functional medicine. If you're asking me what I would do, I would say I'd work with a functional medicine person. But you could also do a lot of research online. I would be aware when using chat gpt and claude. I use them too, but you have to understand that it's taking this information from literally everything across, right? So there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's just kind of giving you a general statement off of that. And so instead, when I create mine, I have specific protocols that I'm pulling from, so that it's giving me from those protocols, and it's not just like some random dude that said something on YouTube. So be careful when you're plugging those in with a chat GPT, but you can do research on Google and say, okay, this is my situation. Are there any reasons why I should not take this supplement? And then I would also just ask your practitioner. It's a good question. Because here's the thing, the reality is that supplements can have a really big effect on your system. And so it's not like, it'll be fine. Like it could have a very drastic effect. So you should ask for sure. Any other questions?